Hello, this is Lamron with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today we're going to do episode 6 of the Fantasy Grounds conversion series. We're going to work on the maps, line of sight, and lighting. This is one of the major parts of doing conversion. You have maps that are included. It is not always as straightforward as you would hope, but in this case we only have 2 maps, so we have pulled these from the images, and we went over how to extract and add the images to Fantasy Grounds in episode 4. So right now I'm in this group. I'll drop it down to Breaking Umberlee's Resolve. That's the name of the group. This is where all the images are, including the NPCs, the handouts, and such. And then there's 2 maps that are included in this module. This is a Adventures League module that I'm converting. And if you've watched some of the other videos, you'll know which one. It's Umberlee's Resolve. But anyhow, so I'm looking at 2 maps. So one is of these Pirate Isles, and then there's another map that is of the ship itself. So there's a couple ways that you could handle this. I kind of mentioned a little bit in the last episode where you can actually take part of this map if you wanted to and break it up into 3 smaller maps. I didn't do that because I don't have as much time to do that, and also because I didn't want to vary from the PDF too much, because this is all on one page in the PDF, so you can essentially do this, and you can even make this fancier. Like if you wanted to add, some sort of color to it or something like that, we might do some of that depending on how much time we get. But the main thing is to get all the line work done, get the grid lined up, and do those sort of things. So this map here doesn't really have any scale or anything, so it doesn't really need much. It's more of a handout than anything. You could use a token or a marker to show where your players are, but there's really nothing on here to add. So you don't really need lighting or line of sight. It kind of is what it is. It's not really made for adventuring with tokens and such unless you really wanted to. You could find a little token of a ship and kind of move it around on here, but it's really not designed for that. So essentially this map here, this regional map, doesn't really need line of sight. It's already kind of colored already, so it's pretty much set in stone. So I'm not really going to mess with that, but over here on the top right, I'm going to click the ID button to unidentify the file name, and I'm just going to call it the Pirate Isles. That's just going to be the name of this title that will display for the players when you share the map with them. So this is probably a map in possession of one of the NPCs or the players. So you might show this as a handout. So I actually probably changed this title to handout instead of map, because it's really not a map. It's essentially a picture of a map, and it's not really going to have or warrant line of sight. If you wanted to make this fancier, you could probably recolor it. You could probably come in here and change some of this forest into green, and put some seagulls on here and such. But it's really not. It doesn't even need line of sight or anything. It's more or less for show. So this is already turning out to be much easier, because now I'm down to 1 map. So the main thing when you're doing maps is to know the scale. Well, I've already kind of messed with the picture here. I think I expanded it or contracted it. So I'm going to put a grid on here and just get a rough idea. So if you're not sure of the scale, you can zoom in and look at some of these squares, and it looks like they're not even true squares. They look like they're potentially, rectangular, so that might be a problem, but we'll find out. So best thing to do to start is find a square that you can actually see, and then you can right click on the map and go into this grid mode on the far right, and then right click on the map, and then you can take and add a layer, and then you're going to take the grid and just kind of get a rough close idea of what the scale is. So if I drag this down and go kind of diagonally, I get an idea of the scale of this. So it looks like it's about 20 or so. Let's see, how does that look? It's hard to tell because of the size of the lines and such. So yeah, it's about 22, and that's actually close. I mean, if you look at the rest of the map, where I actually drag this, it kind of lines up, so it's not bad. I might nudge it down just a hair with a smaller nudge down increment, and that pretty much fixes it. So I got lucky there. I didn't have to fight with the scale too much, so it was at 22, but see here it's not lined up. So that's what I'm saying, like the scale can be off, especially if you resize the maps and you're not using an actual scale that the map was created in. So you can see it worked out good here. But the farther you go away from center, the more distorted it becomes. So these are off a little bit. So it'll work. It's not the end of the world, but it is annoying because the grid was already drawn on the map. So there's not much you can do about that. I mean, if I try to adjust for this area here and get this lined up, then it goes off for these other areas. So I'll try it. We'll see what happens. So I'll move this over and see if I can get these lines to move up. And this is kind of what you want to see, but when you do that, then when you move and look down at the other maps, now it's off over here. So the maps are not created equal, and then when you resize it, it's basically going to throw off the scale. So it's almost better you don't even worry about that and actually just center this as best you can. So I'm going to take this line here and just center it on the walls and the door, and not worry so much about the other stuff. So see, but now it's not centered here. So this is why it may be a better idea to put this in a map editor, or not a map editor, but a photo editor, and then do each boat by itself or each piece of the ship by itself. So there are some considerations. I'm not going to let that small setback, bother me too much. It's not that important to me. I mean, I think that the takeaway here is that you don't want maps that are going to be problematic like this. And when you go and edit the photos like I did, it changes the scale of the image itself. So it kind of breaks the actual size that it was made for. And then it wasn't really designed for virtual tabletop on top of that. So you kind of have to remember that going into these things. But I think around 20 was a good number, because you can get roughly 3 squares across, which is pretty close to what you want. Let me try this 22. Yeah, so you're getting close. As you make these, you'll start realizing that the scale thing is important to know that, and it's harder to set this up if you don't know what the scale is. And I didn't, because I didn't stretch it mathematically. I just took it off the image and reformed it. So lesson learned: if you have a map, try to find one that doesn't already have the grid on it. And then if you want to, you can split these up into individual maps, so you don't have to worry about every single thing lining up. But this is basically 5 foot squares. It's actually a basic map. It's not too bad. We're going to employ some techniques, because this is a ship. So ships are a little bit harder to work on. So this is a good practice. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the other options. But I'm just going to go ahead and just put the line of sight on here first. So we have a deck here, the main deck, and then these 2 forecastles. So traditionally, we used to put line of sight around the whole boat, but then you can't get any light or anything from the side here. So what we're going to do with that is actually going to put in a layer of a doorway, essentially, for these, so that when a window, so you can still see through there, but you can't move through there without climbing over the deck, essentially. So you can add features like that. So I'm going to go to the line of sight tool, and I'm going to first add in the occluders, the red lines first, and then we'll do the glass. But so we'll start up here at the top. Let's see, we have the steering wheel and then we also have looks like a ballast of some sort. So I'm going to go to I'm in the map tools, unlock the map, and over here on the right there's a brick, which is the line of sight tool. We already did the grid. And then right now I'm in the selection tool, which is default. So I'm going to go to the line tool. The ideal thing is just kind of click around. You don't have to be exactly perfect. And just kind of, especially on something that's kind of rounded, they're harder to get away with just making a straight line. So that's kind of why I'm tracing around the periphery of this thing. And you don't really need to be right at the edge of the map. So we want to keep kind of in the center. There's no point in having it right up against the wall. So that's that. And then I'm going to do this interior part. Now this, you could use a straight edge. So if you want a straight line, you just click somewhere, hold down the shift key, and then drag your point. And it's okay to drag it past a little, because when you go to try to click on that line when you're trying to meet up with it, it's better to go through it, past it, than miss it altogether and have to go back later and fix it. So you might as well just do it this way, which is to go past or through the area that you're trying to make the line. And see, I kind of went past the area a little, so that helps with determining, you know, where the lines are. And you can also use these straighter lines instead of freehand. So in some areas of the boat I will use lines, and in other areas like this contour, not so much. So again, I'm going to do the same process over here. Hold shift and just draw through. Click on the map, hold shift, pull down, draw through. So this is an important step in learning how to use the map tools, is instead of fighting the map tool, I kind of work with it as best you can. Now this here is something that I need to consider. I might put a straight line here, but then I'm going to have to come off here anyways. But there's places on here where there's straight lines, so I'll try to do that. So I'll come roughly in about the center here and put a straight line back here. And I can put one from here to here. The trick is, though, you don't want to be right on the edge, so that helps. So I'm going to come back through here, double click, and again, I was a little bit too aggressive on where I was going here. Okay. So that's that. Now I'm going to connect the lines with this couple series of lines here. So it's on snap to grid. I'm on the wall tool and the line tool still. So I'm just going to come through here and essentially just make a connection. The idea is you don't want too many data points. So these little vertices here, trying to avoid having hundreds of them on the map when you don't need it. So that's that. You might put a little bit of like a window here just so they can't move through there. This is an actual mast or some sort, so you can actually put line of sight on there. So I can just put a little ellipse thing and just kind of left click and drag a little bit, and that will give me the ellipse. And to move that, you can double click the center or double click on one of these points. So if you go to the selection tool, double click on here, grab the center somewhere, and then line it up where you want it. That should do it. And if you want it freehand, you don't want snap to grid, you can turn that off. And that helps with so that you can drag it without it, you know, bothering you and trying to pull it in one direction or another. So that's that. I'm just going to do all the line work first. So I'm not going to worry about cleaning it up yet because I want to get all the occluder data in there first. So we'll go in and make adjustments and changes in a little bit. So all I'm doing right now is focusing in on getting the lines in, and then we'll go back and touch everything up. So that's the top part, essentially, on the front and the rear. Now for the actual ship. So I'm going to do the same type of thing for this, for underneath these forecastle and quarterdeck. So these are interior features, and these up here are exterior, and the center piece is exterior. So that's kind of what makes this kind of difficult to do. So I'm going to put straight lines down through where the doorways are. So again, you want to hold the shift key, click where you want to start, maybe somewhere in the middle of the wall, as close as you can get. And you notice I'm not right on the very edge, and I'm in the line tool and the wall tool. So I'm just clicking on a point here and dragging through. See, that's a little bit too far back. So I just hit escape. I didn't finish the line. That's a little better. Just trying to get closer to the center and not right dead nuts on any particular segment there. Okay, so there's that. And now I'm going to draw in the actual area that's supposed to be quarantined off. So again, I'm in the line tool and the wall tool. So always remember where you're at in the tool. Because a lot of times you'll be in the selection tool and you go, oh, you're trying to draw and it doesn't draw or whatever. So get used to switching between those tools. That's something that you'll notice it can get frustrating. So all I'm going to do here is kind of the same thing I did up there, is just kind of click around for this more kind of rounded features. They're a lot harder to deal with, but I found if you do it manually and you just get, practice with it, it's not too bad. It can be annoying though, because you're going to find that it's not as easy as it looks. Because it's not straight, and the snap to grid thing is kind of working against you too. So, alright, so that's pretty much it. So you notice I drew past it. I don't care right now. All I'm doing is getting the lines in. We'll worry about that later. So again, I'm going to hit Shift and Control and bring this line in here. And that way you don't have to be, right on the money. There we go. And again, I'm going to do this piece. This piece up here. And then might as well do this center wall. So I'm here, I got the tool. Is there another one over here? Nope. And then these are stairwell walls, so I think I'll make those, what do you call it? I'll make those some kind of, probably terrain. And I might put terrain around the baluster or a window, so you can't just walk through it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, let's go down to the bottom here. More line work. So it's getting a little easier because now there's big lines. So I'm going to do the lines right now. So I'm to about here. Like I said, click. Hold down Shift and just drag. The reason I keep moving that over is because I don't want it to be right at the edge. I want to see a little bit of the line there. Especially on a black and white map. It's not really about the color, it's more or less seeing the boundaries. So again, I'm going to click on them to do the straight lines first. Get those out of the way. And I'll do the vertical ones too. To divide the rooms up. So this has a couple divisions here, so I'm going to go ahead and click that and go. Alright, so that's the majority of the lines. So this is the hold, you know, where the bilge is. This is another storage area. And you can see I have the rest of these masts to deal with, so I'm going to go ahead and do all those at once. So I'm going to go to the ellipse tool and just left click and drag. I'm not even going to necessarily worry about moving those yet until I need to. But those are going to be a solid line for sure. So those look pretty good actually. I don't have to move those. Start at the edge of the circle and just drag and drop it. Pull down, like left click and pull, and hold the left mouse button down to drag it. That makes it a lot simpler than trying to fight with it. These black and white maps are not as fancy, but they seem to be a little bit simpler to work on. Although, you can easily kind of skew them if you put too much stuff in there. So let's put that right there. So as you can see, the idea or the trick here is to stay in one tool. If you keep bouncing around between tools and different features, it's going to take forever. If you want to cut down time, find a kind of a methodology to your madness, so you're not constantly shifting tools around. That's important if you got a large project. So again, I want to go to the line tool, and it's going to draw through. Line tool, draw through. Sometimes you just have to let it go. This takes you more than an hour or so. It's probably too much. So, just trying to get the line work done. You can make adjustments later if you have to. Again, here's more line work. So rather than fighting this thing, I'm going to go ahead and move this out and draw the line through it. It's a lot easier doing it that way. So again, just clicking and trying to get somewhat centered. Holding the shift key keeps the line straight. This will help speed things up. You try to stay in one type of tool at a time. All right, so that's most of the. Oh, here's a line. See, I could have extended this, which I'll probably do. So if I take this selection tool and take the end of this piece and just go past it, but see, it's going to make a little divot there in this circle, so I don't want to do that. But if there wasn't this mast in the way, I would have definitely went all the way through, because you're trying to get away with the least amount of lines as possible when you're drawing these in. You don't want to have to, keep changing tools around. That's what really takes time. And now I got to draw the front and the back end of these boats. So there's another straight line here. I'll put that in. So you start finding your own groove as to how you want to do this, because it is simpler once you develop a methodology. Because if you just go randomly wherever, it can take forever. It can get real annoying quick. Okay, so now that we're done past that, now I'm going to go ahead and just freehand these. I'm in the line tool. Just going to continue off of this point here and just kind of click around the ship. When you're in a rounded area, it's probably a better idea to turn off the snap to grid because it's trying to stay straight and you're kind of going at an angle, so it can kind of throw you off. So it can be annoying for sure. Yeah, so I would turn off the snap to grid on these curved areas. That will keep Fantasy Grounds from trying to pull the points from you, because it gives you a little bit more flexibility on where you're going to click. And it helps keep the annoyance down, so it's not pulling on you. That's what it was trying to do earlier. I had snap to grid on, it was just trying to pull it whatever way it wanted to. This way I have more control over it. I don't have to worry about, you know, that sort of thing anyways. So as you can see, I'm kind of just going through systematically and putting this stuff in. And like I said, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but you do want the lines to intersect, so I went past the line right there, and I'll do the same thing here. We'll kind of click around. It's like so. It's like that. Double click. There we go. So I got this back one to do. It really does take a little patience and accuracy. You do have to have a little bit of dexterity with where you're clicking and where you're going to place your lines. Here's another area that I messed up here. So grab that, kind of come through, connect it right about there. Same thing with this, connecting at this square. It's a lot further back than it looks, but it's not crazy. Alright, so that's pretty close. So let me double check. Got that. Yep. Okay. So that's the main pieces. The only difference is this forecastle part, or the main deck. I'm going to use a window tool, even though it's not a window. We're going to use that to help differentiate between the the deck and such, and the closed areas and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is go to the door tool, or excuse me, in this case the window tool, and I'm going to turn back on the snap to grid. I'm going to go to the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to put a big rectangle around here and kind of tie it in with the existing framework. So I'll just click on one of these points. This is probably here, and then I'm going to hold down, or I just left click, so click and then left click and then just drag it until you get to wherever you want to drop it. And that's going to be essentially that's going to hold the people from going over the edge, except for maybe on this very end point, but I can fix that with the extend the lines out. So that's basically allows light to come in, but it blocks movement. So that's what you want. So this will block them from moving between these areas. I'm going to have to line these out because these are going to be terrain tools, and I have to remove the centerpiece. I'll show you how to do that. But other than that, it's going to be fairly simple. I'm going to put a terrain on these points too, just so, just like on this top square. So we'll see. So let's see what we got here. Do I have to do anything else like that? Nope, just this area that's open to the air, but it's low enough to where they can jump out over into the ocean. I blocked it up here, but could have been a window if we wanted to. But I went ahead and put window here because it's a different surface, but it's on the same plane. So that's one reason I did it that way. And then might put a window on the steering wheel and the ballista and the this is a mangonel or some kind of some sort of deck weapon. So, and then I also noticed I forgot 2 masts in this mix, so I'm going to go back and do those. There's 3 actually. I missed all these 3 center ones. So I want to go back to the line tool and the wall tool and just kind of zoom in a little. Left click and drag. I'm in the ellipse tool actually. And then down here, same thing. And one more. I might find another one, but it's ideal to go back through it. I didn't look very carefully, but you want to go back and try to make that so that you capture everything. You're not jumping around. So that's what's starting to happen as I'm getting ahead of myself. Now I'm jumping around. So, oh, here's another line I missed. See this dividing line right here. So these are the things that you'll notice when you zoom in. It's perfectly normal. What isn't normal is spending 2 hours on a map that you're only going to use for like a couple hours. Okay, so that's that. We got that deck in there. What I would do now is probably start cleaning up the lines before I break out any other tools. So over here, like up here on this part of the map, I'm going to just single click on a point, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the selection tool first, because otherwise it'll try to draw. I'm going to turn off the snap to grid because I might want to make little fine adjustments like that without it trying to move on me. So I'm just going to single click on the points that I want to get rid of. And that's all I'm doing right now is just kind of making any adjustments like this. I might pull that back up just a hair. Might pull this up a little bit. So these are the fine adjustments that you'll make towards the end. When you're getting close to that point. I know I got to fix up here by the point here where the point of the ship is. This is the hardest part right here. There we go. It's just not perfect science. It's really annoying, but it is what it is. Okay, so we got that connected. This extra line here can go away, I think. Yep. So that takes care of that little segment. Now I'm going to get rid of this segment here. I'm going to extend this one over and through. I don't mind that it has an extra dot there, so I can remove that. And then over here, same thing. I'm going to go through and remove any extraneous lines. Like this line right here probably doesn't need to be there. So what I would do with that potentially is take another line and go in the wall tool, trace through it, double click. That gives you this vertex here. Then go back to the selection tool, double click on this segment here, hit delete, and then single click on this line here and delete that. And then if you don't want these points, you can delete those too. So that's how you clean up a line if it gets kind of messed up or if it's complicated. You can draw extra lines through there to set up your vertex or where they all connect. And then you go back later and clean that up. So this is just a way to fix that. Do I need to do anything here? Yep. So we got this one here. We need to clean that up. Let's clean up this one. This tail end here. So that's all we're doing is just kind of coming through here and cleaning up these little tails. This is where you draw past whatever it is you're working on to get through it, so you're not spending hours doing one little thing at a time. This is kind of more efficient because you're kind of focusing in on one element and you're going in and just kind of cleaning up now. So I wanted to do this before I introduce more features, so that way it's not a big mess. Now you can do it in any order you like. It's up to you. But I like this order so far for this map. Every map should be tackled differently. You're going to have some basic things that you always want to do, but depending on the shape of the map and the amount of time you have to work on it, you're going to have to decide which stuff to prioritize and which stuff you'll do later, because you don't have to do it all in one day. That's the nice thing about it. You can always come back and say, yeah, okay, I'll just work on this part of it and then come back later. That would be something like if you had a really complex map. That's probably what you would end up doing. Like I said, if you spend more than an hour on this, it's going to drive you nuts. It really will. Once you get proficient with it, though, it's not too bad. It just takes, it's time consuming. That's all there is to it. There's no way around it until you find out ways to be efficient. I mean, you can use third-party software to try to get close to what you're doing here, but ultimately, oops, I didn't want to get rid of that line. What's going on here? You know what? I think I'll just probably end up leaving that. Let me try this one. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother with that. If I do anything, I'll move this line in. That would be all I would do. It does absolutely nothing. It's not going to hurt anything. So that's another thing, is pick your battles, because it's just usually not worth it. I mean, I could come in here and put another line to get rid of that. So if I go put this little line here and draw, see, it's so small that it's not even worth it. And I even got the snap to grid off, so it's not worth the effort. So I'll go back to the selection tool and keep cleaning up these areas as I need. Let's see, it's got all that. Got the mast in there. Oh, see, here's another dividing line I forgot. Now let's go back and clean that up. So that pretty much gets the majority of those end pieces out, and I got this lower deck to do, where the hold is. Getting there. So that's one thing, you know, that this map process is almost like a whole separate thing. So that's why you'd want to try to do that all at once, not one at a time or one every couple days. You can do it that way if you don't like being tied up with one process the whole time, but it's not as efficient doing it the other way where you keep jumping back and forth. Okay, I think we're good on the line stuff right now. As you can see, we got all that in. It's not too bad, but it is a little time consuming. So that's one thing that you're going to notice regardless of how you do it. You can make it go smoother though. Okay, so these are basically walls here. So I think this actually looks like a doorway, but I think that one goes down. So what I'm going to do is just put a terrain tool here probably, or a line tool. Actually, I think I'll just put a window line in there. So we're going to go to window and go to the line tool and just use this as a weight. I want to put the snap to grid back on. There we go. So click this, click that. And that will allow them to see it, but they can't walk through it. They have to come around. So that might be helpful. Because if you put terrain on there, then you have to turn it on and off. It's a pain in the butt. So they just have to walk around. And probably for the stairs, same thing. Just draw a line through here. see what else. Those I put in. See, that was, I put these in as hard steps, but that's all right. Let's see. What I might do is put, nah, I don't even want to deal with that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of that around here. So I'll just use the ellipse tool for that. Just kind of, well, let's see. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's use the ellipse tool. That should take care of that. Then I'll just draw some lines here. We're still in the window tool, by the way. So line tool. Gonna draw a line through the center. Gonna draw another line right here. Another line right here. I think this will be good enough. It'll show the so that's the other weapon, basically. So you can still see it, but you just can't walk right through the apparatus. Same thing with the steering wheel. So just draw this piece right here. And draw this center line. Alright, so getting there. Let's see what we want to do down here. So you could do that with this crates if you wanted to. Unless they're really tall, then you'd put a terrain on there. So maybe this big crate back here is huge, and you can, you know, essentially climb on top, maybe a couple of the other ones. But I don't think I'm going to put line of sight on all those crates. I don't think it's necessary unless I'm going to do like a plot point where somebody's hiding in there and they're going to have to hide on top. So maybe I will put just one terrain feature on this very top one. So this one's higher than your head, essentially. And you can climb on top and hide between this and the very top of the ceiling. So that might be a situation where you could get away with terrain, but everything else seems kind of arbitrary, like you don't really need to do it. Down here, again, I'm going to put that window tool in here. So, window, line tool, just draw this in. Notice it's not perfect. I don't really care. Alright, so go back and fix it if you're worried about it. Okay, so what else do we have? Okay, now we're going to actually put in the doors or any sort of portals. So we got most of the line work done. Got the stairs in. Okay, so I think I want to adjust that just a little bit. I'm a perfectionist, so it's not a good thing doing this kind of work. You'll go nuts if you're a perfectionist. Okay, so when you want to go in and put doors in, we're going to door tool, we're going to rectangle tool. Now, traditionally before, not less than a few months ago, when you used to draw doors, you had to take the occluders out yourself manually. Now all you have to do is just left click and drag your little rectangles, and it automatically takes it out for you. It's so nice. That was so time consuming before, when you had to go in manually and delete that. Now it just removes that line for you. It's so easy now. There's another door here. I'm making them a little bit bigger because if you're zoomed out quite a ways when you're playing, it's very easy to not be able to click on that, and if you can't open the door, it's annoying. And then you have to do it for your players. So you want to leave it a little bit bigger so you can engage or interact with it even if you're zoomed out. So if you're like way out here, you can still click on it. If you make it too thin, it's going to be a pain in the butt to click on it when you're zoomed out on the map. So you want to make it a little bit bigger than you think. There's the portals for there. Now, got to make one for this area. And I am going to have to remove this line eventually. So there I got a little bit of cleanup, and I got to move that. But I'm going to get the doors in first, so. Looks like, let's see. That doesn't have any up there. So I think I got most of the doors in. Yeah. Okay, so I gotta remove some of these excess lines here from making this deck. So the easiest way to do that is just to intersect it with another line and then delete the tail. So if I go to the line tool, and I'm gonna go to, in this case, this is a window. So if I cross through that, that's essentially gonna make me another point that I can work with, so I can delete it cleanly. So now I go back to the selection tool, and I can make my adjustments as needed. So like this one here. So I'm in the line tool right now. I got a selection tool there. There we go. So this is where you're gonna kind of clean up and make your changes and such. It's not too bad once you get used to doing this. Yeah, if I didn't remove that, it wouldn't be able to get through that doorway. So remove that, take that out. That should be good. No issues there, I don't think. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Control Z to undo a mistake or a problem. Control Y to redo. So if you have a problem or you did something wrong, you didn't go too far, you go back. So again, I'm going to double click on this thing, click in the center, and just kind of recenter that. Take a look, get rid of these excess tails. We don't need those. And I got to get rid of these lines here because they can't go through that if I leave it like that. So again, I'm going to draw a line through here and down here. Now I'll go back to the selection tool, double click to select all three of these, and then single click to get rid of that line. So again, double click and hit delete. That gets rid of the line there, and then single click, it'll get rid of this segment. If I double click, it would get rid of everything that's attached to it, I think. Alright, so that's that. So we have this door tool. Okay, that works, yep. Anything else I want to adjust while I'm here? Yeah, maybe these things. Yeah, that's what happens when you become a perfectionist of this. It's really gonna add time to it, but that's just me. My nature. It's hard for me to not do that. Okay, so that is a majority of the line work. So we got the masks, we got the doorways. It said I'm not going to do all these crates. I don't think it's necessary, unless, like you said, it's going to be a story element. Now you can put candles and such in here, but there's really no indicator. But I think this thing right here, I don't know what this is for. Probably another mast. I probably need to draw that in. So I want to go ahead and draw an ellipse, and then I want to switch to the wall tool, and I'm just going to click around. There we go. So there's the mast. Let's see, what else? Anybody else think of anything? Yeah. I've still been doing it the old way. My eyes are open. That's cool. Me too. I was always working hard to make each wall be precisely another wall. I never thought to overshoot and delete. Yeah, it is simple. And you think that you're going to save time by clicking on that line, but half the time you miss it anyways. So even if you can see well and you're not zoomed in enough, when you drag the line through, you're half the time you miss it anyway. So you have to go back and connect it. So you might as well just draw it through. You can see that. And it's easier just to go back and click on those and clean it up, because it is difficult. And then, like you said, you're being too perfect. That kills the time right there. All right, so got the majority of it. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the line of sight. And what you'll see here is nothing, because I don't have anything on the map. No light sources, nothing. So I'm going to turn on the ambient lighting because I want to show you something. So turn on ambient lighting. go to the ambient lighting default here, and then the preset is, I'm gonna go with dawn for the daytime thing effect. And then when you come back here and you turn on the lighting, you kind of have this glow. So you can already see some of the occluders casting a shadow off into the distance here. So that's a good thing. So we know that that looks pretty decent. And like I said, the glass doesn't block the light, so that's perfect. All right, so that looks okay. I think I am going to add a little bit of lighting to the interior cabins, just for maybe I'll put a candle on one of the desks or something like that. So let's do that. So just to kind of give it some ambiance, I'm not going to put any lighting outside, but definitely inside. So what I'm going to do is this first area, there's a dining table. So I want to go to the lighting tool. And right now I'm on the layer for the map. So if I click away from that, it's going to give me a blank slate. So I'm not really tied up on anything. And I'm going to click the add light. So what I mean is if I select that, it's going to put the candles on the same layer with everything else. Kind of want them on their own separate thing. So if I click on this table somewhere, I can place a light. Now that can be a chandelier or something like that, or a candle or a lantern, whatever you want it to be. I think in here, this kitchen area, I'm going to make a lantern. So I'm going to go with, I'm in the add light tool, drop down, go to lamp or lantern. Probably a lantern because it's mobile. And I'm just going to single click and it should essentially light that area up. There we go. There's the lantern. So it's nice and bright in there. It's probably where they eat, mess hall type thing. And then over here, I'm going to put a candle. And it looks like there's a bed over here, so I'll leave that alone. So I'm going to drop this down and go to candle. And you could put each room have its own lighting system, but I'm going to cheat and just put them all in the same layer. But if you wanted to have each room with its own individual lighting, you could make different layers for each room. But generally, you're only in one or two rooms anyway, so I don't know if it's even worth it. But I'm going to go ahead and put a candle in this corner. And then over here where the sleeping quarters is, I think I'm going to put, there's going to be a candle right by the mast, or maybe two on either side of the door. That makes more sense. Yep, so there's your two candles to light up that room. This is some kind of meeting room or maybe a jail cell or something. I'm not sure. But I'll put one candle over here. This is probably a water closet. That's probably the bathroom, so I don't want to do anything with that. These rooms look kind of private, like they're small. This one has a desk and a bed, so I'll go ahead and put one over here on the desk. It really doesn't need it. There might be a lantern hanging somewhere in this area to light up the hold or the lower deck. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the lantern tool. So I'm still in lighting, but I'm going to use the lantern preset. And I'll put one here. And then I'll put one over here. And that should light this area up pretty well. Yeah, there we go. Now, I should have stayed in the candle because I got one more area, but I think these are more like storage areas, so I'll put a lantern there. And this empty hold area is probably for cargo, contraband, that sort of thing, so I'll go ahead and put a light in there. Actually, I might undo that. Yeah, I don't want to put a light in there. Maybe they want to keep it dark. But there we go. So let's go back to play mode. So this is what the players will see essentially. There's a door here, a door there. There's some lit up rooms. Looks like there's stairwell. Yep, it looks pretty good. So you can really see that flicker on the candle when you get closer. You can see it flickering. That's pretty cool. Yep, there's the two doors. So I'm kind of just checking the features out, make sure it's okay. All right, so one thing that you have to do with maps that have, well, you don't have to, but will help. If you can see now, there's some influence from the ambient lighting. You don't want that inside the ships. Only this deck area and these upper decks should get that lighting, or this up the aft, these up here. they'll get lighting, but everything else under the rooftops and stuff, you want to occlude that from the ambient light from outside. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to interior lighting, because I want to name stuff so I know what the heck's going on with it. And you can get a lot fancier. Like I could color the water. I might do that just to give it a little bit more. That shouldn't take too much. So there's the interior lighting, so I know what the heck it is. It's important to name your features so you don't get lost. Okay, there's the interior lighting. Now what I'm going to do is go back to the lighting tool, go back to this ambient lighting. Now I have it selected to the actual, outdoor lighting of being dawn or early morning. So I'm going to put a mask on, and you don't see the mask yet, but what we're going to do is exclude the areas that should not be getting light. So this would be like this whole lower deck. So essentially I'd just go like this and capture most of this lower deck. And then that also this hold area. So to do a non-square line, you hold down the Alt key, and I'm just going to trace around on the interior. And all I'm doing is changing the masking here, because you don't want the light from outside coming into this area, because it's not for that. Essentially, that ambient lighting is for outside. And if you have a combined map that has more than one indoor, if it has indoor and outdoor, you have to go through and exclude these from the ambient lighting outside. So it's important that you remember that. It basically, it'll be light inside when it shouldn't. And you don't have to do this in one fell swoop. You can come through and just kind of clean it up if you missed anything. Or if you do too much, you can get rid of it too. Like that. So if that's the case, then you switch to this reveal area. That'll do that. But I want to change that back to hide area. So I'm hiding this area in here from the outdoor ambient light. That's all I'm doing. So you might do the same thing in the stairwell. This one, anyways. So I will use the square tool in that, because that's pretty square. But you can't unmask, that's right. Forgot about that. But you can drag it. So if you go like something like this, that'll just exclude the light from the outside. So it's getting a little bit of light because of the depth of it and such. And let's see what else. We need to do this whole thing down here. So all the way to here to get a majority of it. And then I'm going to hold Alt and just trace around this area so that you can capture that. And then here's another uneven area where I'm going to have to freehand it. So I'm holding down the Alt key as I'm doing this. You can see I left a spot out here and here and a little bit over here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but close enough. Let's see, I didn't get this back thing, I don't think. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key or the Alt key and just trace around back in here. So that's all I'm doing is revealing the mask. And what that does is it blocks the sun or the outdoor lighting from penetrating inside the boat. So when you're adventuring, it doesn't make sense if the sun is just as bright as it would be outside. So that's why we did that. I just don't use the ambient lighting enough. This map looks very nice with the light, very atmospheric. Yeah, it does. It's got the for a black and white map, it's not bad. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, yeah, usually you're either all indoors or all outdoors. If that's the case, you don't normally have to mess with the lighting. But when you have a combined map that has both in and outdoor features, that's when you would do that. Okay, so the next thing is, yeah, you can change the shadow length. So like right now, here's the length of the shadows. You can increase or decrease depending on the time of year it is. I kind of like it around 10 or 8. I think that's a good number. It looks more realistic. But if the sun's lower in the atmosphere or in the sky, and you're in the wintertime, the shadows will be longer because the sun doesn't rise as high. So you got that in mind. And then you can change the direction of where the sun is coming from. So you can do that too. And you can also change the color. But now what I'm thinking I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to put a mask over the top of this for water. So let's do that. Let's play around with that. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to make a effects layer, which is essentially just going to be a color layer. So I'm going to go to add effects and then add an effects layer. And then I'm going to assign that as color changer or time of day. We'll do color change, adjust colors is what it's called. Now, if I mess with it now, it affects the whole map. We don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the mask. And the only areas that I want it to affect is everything except for the boat. So for right now, I think I'm going to turn up the blue and the green a little, turn the red down, turn the brightness down a little bit, blur the mask, and then I'm going to reveal just the areas where I want the water to come through. So all it is going to be a blue blanket, essentially. I'm not going to do anything super fancy because I don't have time for that. But this is a way you can kind of color the map a little bit more. But since it is water, it's kind of nice to have something that kind of represents the ocean. And if you have assets for Fantasy Grounds, like all those fancy tiles, I could have used those too, but I don't want to go that far. I'm really just trying to illustrate the map itself and try to keep it more close to the real module. This is just a bonus thing I'm doing here. This is not necessary in the overall scheme, but I think it adds that immersion that people want when they're playing. And I think if you leave it out, it kind of sucks for especially the GM. If you have to run it, this is a Adventure League module, so if you have to run this 100 times, it's gonna suck. So I just think that adding these little extras, even though it's not much, it really helps a lot. So that's the kind of the water, and then I can go through with the Alt key and capture this stuff that I left out. I don't know if you can hear the birds, but I do have Sirenscape on, so if anyone's wondering where the sound's coming from, I have the web player very kind of faint in the background. I don't like it to be overwhelming because that can get annoying too. But there we go. So yeah, so we don't have to be perfect. I mean, just get a majority of it out of here. Yep. Go. Go. Yeah, I didn't want to spend a bunch of time on this part of it, but it is kind of good to show. I mean, we are kind of a learning thing, so it is a good idea to show some of these things. Just, you never know what you're going to come up against when it comes to the maps. Okay, so that kind of adds just a little bit more ambience to this instead of just having a flat, flat area. If I wanted to, I could make this area brown or whatever, but I think I'll leave it like that. Okay, so basically, now that I have that in, now I'm going to put another tool in here for the water itself, and I'm going to essentially do the same thing. And I'll put the water layer, I don't know, we'll see what it looks like. But again, I'm going to add an effects layer, and then I'm going to drop this down and go to water. And you can see it distorts the whole map. So we don't want that. So we're going to put the mask tool on, which is part of this, and then maybe blur it a little bit. And just kind of do the same thing I did with the blue there. So I can take and drag and drop this whole thing here. Take that consideration. Take this stuff over here. Let's get a majority of it lined out first. That way you're not fighting it. And that'll give you that kind of watery effect that you might want when it comes to playing and such. Yeah, it kind of gives it that swimming pool effect, so it's kind of cool. It's almost like you're playing with a toy boat in a swimming pool, is what because it has that lettering on there. That's kind of cool. So it kind of gives you that illusion. Now you can change the, how much it's doing this by just simply changing the speed, the intensity. You can turn down the intensity a little bit, or you can turn it up. But I think this right about 10 was good, or 8. Yeah, so it kind of gives it that feeling. And then on the edge here, if you don't like the rippling black edge, I can go back and hide that area because I got a little too close to the edge. So that's just something that you'll learn not to do. You get too close to the edges on these tools, it starts distorting. Like up here, if you look close, it starts pulling off of there. You don't want that. So, I mean, if you're trying to be perfect, so that might be an area that I fix. Just for an example. I'm not going to do all of them, but anyway, so that gives you that. So you do have a little bit of that water effect, and then you have the boat. And then my last final touch would be to lock these so I don't move them accidentally. If I was going to have a lot more layers, I'd put them in folders. That way they're not, clouding up the place. And looks like I got a little close on the edge here. So, here we go. Now I'm just going to go back and reveal just this area here. So you can see I got too close to the edge on the boat. So that's something you want to try not to do. So, there we go. And up here, did a little bit too. Okay, so that should be pretty good. See too many other places that need fixing. Alright, so basically what we've done here is we essentially just made it to where kind of give that a little bit of ambience and it's not so generic. But I don't know if I would do that on a regular basis. Probably just do it for me. Now, if you didn't want this thing to be rippling over here, like the square feet thing, you can do that. But I kind of like the water effect, because on these at least. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to take and let's see, adjust colors. I'll say blue. And then water, it's going to be ocean. And just kind of, make sure that you have everything labeled so you know what the heck it is. Because you might have to turn on or off some of these things, like the lighting. Okay, so now that we have that in place, I think we're almost done, but I want to put Caravel Ship for the title up here. And then I'll unidentify it, so when I share this to the players, they'll just see this, not this whole file name. Especially if it's a boss lair. You're like, uh-oh, is this where the boss lives? Okay, so that's pretty good. I think on one more effect, and then we'll call it a day. So I'm going to add some clouds. So here's the layer for the effect here. I'm going to add the effect itself, drop this down, go to clouds, and then I'm going to blur it just a touch, turn the speed down so the clouds aren't moving 100 miles an hour. And then you might want to block out the ship if you don't want the clouds to go over the top. I don't mind, because I can turn it on or off when I need to. And then you can change the offset, which is kind of like where the image rolls. It's like a film strip, and it'll roll through with shadows and with clouds. So The blur tool kind of blends that in more, so it's not so hard, the line. And then we can turn down the shadows a little bit if we want. We can turn up the clouds or turn them down. And then one thing you can also do is you can hide certain areas like we were doing earlier. Or you can put a mask on it and then only reveal the areas where you want the clouds to go, because you may not want it all out here. So that's kind of what we have. But anyways, that's the cloud effect. It kind of gives that, you know, that kind of that feeling that you might be outdoors, experiencing the clouds coming over. You can even add rain and all kinds of stuff. So anyhow, that's that. I think that's good enough. Yeah, so that's essentially what I have for you today. Hopefully that helps you in the future. And it gives you a kind of a starting point. And this is for the module for Umberlee's Resolve. So this will be fun to check out. It'll be a little bit more immersive than just a standard black and white map. So anyways, I think that's good. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And I'm going to size this up where I would have it actually if I was going to play. That way when I want to look at it again, it's not burying other things. That's one thing got to know about Fantasy Grounds is whenever you open a new window for the first time, or if you're working on something, you want to place it where you want it to open next before you exit out of it. So now if I'm going to bookmark this temporarily, but now if I accidentally close it or I need to move it, I can do that, and then I just pop it up and it'll be in the same place. So I don't have to deal with fighting it. So there's zoom to fill. So that looks pretty decent. I mean, like I said, you can add, if you got assets and stuff, you can add your own, but if it's for a commercial product, you want to keep it kind of straight. Now that that's set up, I'll close that. Go back to my campaign area where the images are. Yep, so those maps are, the single map is done. So there's only one map in this whole adventure, and it's that. So that's really simple. And then later on, I will link it to the appendix and to the area in the module where it shows up. And then at the very end, when we do the reference manual, we'll be able to include this. It'll display in the PDF or in the reference manual view. But that's it for today. So that was a good solid hour. So I will talk to you later. See you around the community.